The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 14th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And to the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then, in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers and sisters or your relatives or your rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. And you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Well, at confession, sometimes when you're getting ready to preach a message, we use a lectionary, and so the lectionary outlines the things that we're going to be focusing on through the weeks. And so sometimes when you see a lectionary passage, you look at it and you're like, I don't think this one really applies to me, right? And this was one of those weeks for me. Not because it doesn't apply in the sense that it's important for everybody, it is, but I'm not one of those people that usually tries to get at the head of the table. I don't even care if I'm invited to the table, frankly. I'm just, I'm kind of introverted, and it's like, hey, let somebody else have the glory, don't really care. So I've never been able to understand this passage in that sort of a sense. We all have our thing, this just isn't mine. However, it wasn't until Thursday evening that I realized the second half of the passage kind of is for me. Because here's the thing. Sometimes if I have to sit at the table and someone's going to make me sit at the table, sometimes there are other people I just don't want to be at the table. You know what I'm saying? It can be that person that maybe over Thanksgiving or like a family get-together, you're like, well, if that one doesn't show up, we'll be okay. That maybe our feelings won't be too hurt. Well, Thursday night, here's what happened. My favorite day of the year, almost my favorite, one of my top 3 favorite days of the year, is the day that Nebraska Cornhusker football kicks off. Yes, I'm a Cornhusker fan. Lived there for 3 years when I was a kid. You can't live there without it having an effect. So Thursday night, the Nebraska Cornhuskers are kicking off. It's their season, and we finally think that we have something to look forward to. We haven't had anything to look forward to in about 20 years, but we feel like this is it. So I'm sitting in my living room. I've got my Coke Zero. I've got my peanut M&Ms. I'm decked out in red. My dogs and I are sitting there. The only thing I don't have is a Herbie Husker souvenir and one of those huge obnoxious hats, right? And I'm excited. We're watching the game, and then my arch nemesis shows up on the screen. She doesn't know this, but we've been at war for about 2 years. And the reason we are at war is because when I watch football, I only care about one thing. You know what that is? The game. The only thing I care about when I watch football is the game. That's it. I don't want narrative arcs. I don't want all this other stuff brought in. I just want to watch the game. And then all of a sudden, and I didn't even watch the Super Bowl this last year because I was so tired of it, all of a sudden, my arch nemesis shows up on screen. Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce show up at my Nebraska Cornhusker football game. When I watch Nebraska, I want it pure and undefiled and no Taylor Swift and no Travis Kelce, just the football. I am sick and tired. I'm sure they're lovely people. I don't have anything personal against them. I just wanted to be focused on football. And then not 5 minutes later, my Swiftie wife, who I love very much and is beautiful and has a kind soul, is excited and said, "Oh, I think Taylor Swift is at your football game." Yes, she is. Taylor Swift was not invited to the table. She wasn't supposed to be at my party. I didn't even want her to take so much of a nibble of corn at my Cornhusker table. But there she was. So it was at that moment that I realized, okay, maybe this week's passage is for me a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. So this morning we're going to receive a bit of instruction from Jesus that perhaps chastens me and reminds me that lots of people can come to the party, including Swifties, and maybe you'll find some things that you can identify with as well. We start at verse 1. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. So what's going on here? In that culture, at that time, it's often referred to as an honor and shame culture. Your entire reputation was based on how other people might perceive you. So when you're in a social setting like this, it was really important that you were perceived to be someone of importance. And this didn't just have effect for you. This affected your entire family. It was a social standing. It spoke to finance. It spoke to social status. It spoke to every single aspect you can imagine, and it navigated life. So what does it mean if you're not at the head of the table? Well, it means you're at least a few rungs lower than the person who is. And if you're at the very end of the table, you got some work to do in order to get your clout. You're not quite top tier. You're not top echelon. So to be moved up meant recognition. It meant gain. To be moved down meant shame. It was humiliation. And everyone at that table knew the system, and they were playing the game. It's not so unlike the world today. Even though we may not think about tables in the same way, if we're being honest, there are a lot of ways in which we play the game in different ways. Speaking of football, you can't watch a game now for 2 plays without seeing some player beat his chest or act like he's done something huge for just a rather routine play, right? When I played, it was just sort of like, hey, good job, go back and do it again. Now it's like, hey, TV's all over me. Or how about social media? What has social media created? An entire culture of competition for who's prettiest, who's richest, who travels most, who has the best looking family. Same idea. Politically, it's not always the ideas that lead, but the posturing. And even in churches, it's very often not the humble voice that gets the greatest praise. It's the loudest and most forceful voice. It's the one who seeks glory rather than remaining humble. All of these things, whether sitting at a table in a Pharisee's house or our modern equivalent, say the same thing. Look at me, honor me. Give me the most attention. Give me the possessions I deserve. Give me the spouse and kids I deserve. Give me the house I deserve, the car I deserve, the vacation I deserve. Honor me, Lord, and honor me, world. But not in the Lord's economy. That's not the way God works. For in verse 11 we read, "For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted." It's almost as if Jesus is saying, stop worrying about all that stuff and just trust me. Stop worrying about that stuff. Who cares what other people think? Just trust me. I once had a deputy wing chaplain. His name was Wade Matuska, a great guy. And I'll never forget when he said, everyone believes in the providence and love of God until they're either passed over for a promotion or they're given an assignment they don't want. And that's very true, because both of those things speak to status. Both of those things speak to authority. And the thing that we very often want least is to feel like we're not being recognized, but Jesus is telling us those who will be humbled are exalted, and those who seek to exalt will be humbled. And if that's not enough, Jesus takes it to another level. This is where he starts preaching at me. So I wasn't very happy about this, but here we go. Verse 12, then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. I'm not supposed to invite friends, family, maybe not even wealthy neighbors, just neighbors. Not the people who I care about the most, not the people who remind me of where I stand on social ladders and rungs, not people who affirm me most. Usually, I have some family members that probably that doesn't apply to. Who am I not supposed to? Why? Why wouldn't I invite them? Well, because you already know what you have. They already know what they have. They're already invited. They're always invited. You're always invited. But who's not always invited? The poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. In short, the people that often don't get invited into our lives are the people who have nothing to give back to us in return. Nothing to give back to us in return. They can't give us social standing. They can't give payment. They may not be able to return an act of service. It's just us giving to others out of the overflow of love that Jesus has put in our hearts. And that can be shocking counsel in a world where social status is everything, where banquets are about exchanging honor, gaining prestige. But Jesus tells them to step out of that system entirely. And I wonder if they listened. I wonder if they listened. Because I know how I tend to think about those things when I hear them and I'm confronted by them, by Jesus. And maybe you struggle with this a little bit too. That's nice, Jesus, in principle and metaphorically. But in reality, here's how it's going to work. Why do we do that? Why do we do that to Jesus? The challenge for us is that Jesus doesn't just give us teaching, he gives us example. Though he was the eternal Son of God, he didn't come demanding a place of honor. He was born in a stable to poor parents in a backwater town. He grew up without wealth or privilege. During his ministry, he didn't surround himself with the powerful, but with fishermen, tax collectors, sinners. He touched lepers. He ate with outcasts, the very people who could give him nothing in return. So Jesus doesn't give us a culturally respectable twist at the end of the story. He's just really clear. Invite them, seek them, bring them. Bring them. When the crowds wanted to make him a king, he withdrew. When his disciples argued over who was greatest, he washed their feet. And when the time came for his greatest act, death on a cross, he humbled himself and died for us in the most shameful death in his culture. But God raised him up and gave him glory, didn't he? In Jesus, the principle is fulfilled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So the question for us isn't what Jesus meant by it. It's really clear. The question for us is, why is it so hard for us to do that? And I want to position it this week. I'm going to use $1 million philosophical term. Don't think I'm smart, because I'm not. It's just interesting to me. It's called phenomenology. Right? It's a philosophical school of thought that says half of our problems are that we're bringing a whole world of frameworks into our experiences. So I have my ideas, I bring my ideas into situations, and instead of just letting the experience of that situation be enough and to dictate what I'm experiencing, I have in my idea these frameworks about who you are, what I'm supposed to think about you, how I'm supposed to feel about you. What Jesus does, I think, is actually give us an excellent example of why phenomenology is a relevant philosophy. Because what Jesus does is he blows up all the frameworks. He knows that we come to people thinking about them in particular ways. We want to assign a category. We want to say, you're this, I'm this. You look like this, I look like this. You're here financially, I'm here financially. What Jesus says is, when we do those sorts of things, we're not experiencing people as people. We're experiencing people as categories. And Jesus wants us to see people the way God our Father sees people, as loved part of His creation. He created them just like He created you, just like He created me. So for Jesus, there's no differentiation. It's entirely blow up, get rid of the frameworks, and focus on the person. Invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Jesus isn't working from society's framework at all. He was the least respectable of most of the people in any crowd because he refused to play cultural games. So don't come with an agenda or an ideal. That's what Jesus is saying. Come to meet people. Invite people. Seek a person, not a social strata. Seek people. Don't look at their infirmities or what you think is off. Seek people, not their sexual identities. Seek people. People. And the thing that happens when we seek people, instead of focusing on all the other stuff, is a lot of times we find out we kind of like them, that we have a lot in common, that God is working through them and in their lives just as He works in me and my life and you and your life. And so what we're called to do today, friends, and every day, is remind ourselves that honor sneaks in through pride and independence. Frameworks sneak in through assumptions and categories. Jesus invites us to lay them both down. He calls us to take the lowest seat. The lowest seat. To look at everybody and place myself here so I can place them here. We take the lowest seat. We make room for the people who cannot repay. Jesus calls us to see people as they are and to love them in the moment of encounter. The banquet of God, after all, friends, is not about where we sit or who we think deserves a seat. It's about the gracious disposition of the host. And the host has already given us a place, not because you or I fit a framework, but because He loves us. So here's the good news. It's still hard for me to say. The table of Jesus is big enough for Husker fans and Swifties. It is. Yeah, painful, Carl. It's painful. It is big enough for people who seem like they belong, and it's big enough for people we would never expect to be there. Everyone who humbles themselves will be exalted, because the host himself delights to honor the lowly. Amen.